Nice. I should turn the volume down on my computer here. There we are. Cool beans. We're large and in charge.
I'll be right back.
Yep. Holy cow! Ooh. Yay! Shit going on. I'm looking forward to the magic construction. What? I've got too much shit happening today. How you doing, Scott?
Doing all right. My day was packed. Just so you know, yeah, my day was packed.
Yep. I think I'll have to come up with a thumbnail for this one in particular, since it's a world building session, you're not your typical setup.
Oh yeah.
They take me about like an hour and a half to throw together. It's really strange. I would've-
There's a science behind it. I love it.
So far, I think I've been able to do pretty well. I use my I use my son's like blanket because it's got a sort of a greenish. It's got like a green thing on the back, and I just flip it over and hang it off the TV, and then take a photo of something that I need, and then I just wipe all that out. It's got seams in it, unfortunately, which makes it harder to like chroma scratch it all out.
I'd say as long as it's a solid color that's not white or black, you could probably get away with,
It's
blue or
easier.
something.
Yeah, it's easier.
You should have an Amazon wish list.
I think I do. Don't really remember. I like use Amazon, but I don't use it. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain
well, I
that.
mean, now that you're a big time streamer, you should have an Amazon wish list that you just link in the bottom, and then if people are feeling generous, they can, buy you a green screen or something.
Right. All I can think of is like Big Mouth whenever like Andrew was getting addicted, and you just hear the woman just like, "Buy me mini fridge."
Yeah.
It's on Amazon wish list.
Okay, so it looks like Bill's out for the night.
Ah, he just hit in. Oh, he did.
Dealing with sick kiddo. Have fun, gents.
Yeah, I wonder what's getting after all the chitlins these days. What's hitting yours there, Drew?
I don't know. The youngest woke up last night every half hour and kept getting sicker and sicker. So,
Like that kind, or just like coughing?
No. Just coughing and fever.
It's school starting. After having not had.
It's kennel cough. You're back in school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got knocked out. I took Tuesday off and I slept. I slept like 2 hours, got up, worked for an hour, went back to sleep for a couple hours, and did that all day, and then went to bed at my normal bedtime and woke up the next day feeling kind of miserable.
Yeah, I'd imagine you probably would. That doesn't sound fun.
But I'm going to say, this has been a really rough year. I just spent 2 hours today planning out the next 9 weeks of my philosophy class. But the nice thing is, the kids picked which path they want to go down. I now lay it out and start them on their journey, and then step back and watch the fun.
They pick their spec.
Mm-hmm.
Their talent spec.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go Nicomachean ethics. I don't know about you. I'm going Nietzsche.
It's what they do is they pick, like in metaphysics, I was like, okay, do you want to explore life after death? Do you want to explore the nature of good and evil? Do you want to go into a study of faith and religion or Eastern philosophies? What do you want to do? And they're like, we want to study good and evil. Okay, great. We're going to read this book and we're going to watch this movie.
Do you remember
And here's the next 9 weeks.
Eastern philosophy or Eastern religions, whatever was like the fastest class to fill up at St. Mary's?
Oh yeah, it was a fun class.
It was like within, half an hour it was full.
Yeah, so they're going to be getting, in the coming weeks, they'll get Nietzsche's reoccurrence, the eternal reoccurrence of the same. They will get a whole thing on Harry Potter and near-death experiences.
He had a few of those.
They will get Aristotle's, the first philosopher argument, the argument of the theological arguments. And they will get the proof of God's existence, because they wanted me to prove God existed. So I'm like, oh, Thomas Aquinas, here we come.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about God's feet.
Oh, that story comes in.
Matt.
God has And then the next unit is ethics. And they get to choose between ethics in war or ethics in real life.
I have to deal with ethics every day as part of my job. It is a fun thing trying to explain. Yes, that might be legal, but it is not ethical. As a member of the legal department, they're like, "Is this legal?" And I was like, Yes, but it's not ethical, so we're not going to do it. All right, so D, we're going to do world building.
Yeah.
We're going to talk magic.
What do you
Mashik.
want to know?
Old Ivar coming through, sort of like, I've got all the lessons for you.
You know what? I really delved into the magic part of Ivar and really had a lot of fun with his character. Whereas with Max, I'm still struggling. I'm like, he's like the mean version of Barrack.
It
Kind
takes
of,
a
yeah.
while to find your stride. I mean,
Well, the character is starting to. He needed a counterbalance. So, actually, what's funny, Drew, is that you kind of fell victim to one of the things that shadows can do to you. Is that if you have a hollow point in your character construction, it does that. It creates this sort of like vacuous personality problem, where you can't. It's like you can't really. Like you're not going anywhere. You're still part of the story. Nothing else. But you can't mesh with anybody either. And then something has to happen that like, bloop, flips it over,
No.
which happens to be Ray Shade.
I was going to say, it's your sunglasses.
You got fucking sunglasses. No, you're right, because I've actually felt in many ways that Max has been really difficult for me to play, because he almost, through his character development, gets painted into a corner.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get him out of that so he can grow.
Yeah, it comes from, I guess, probably like years and years and years and years of like narrowly focused character design coming from just about everywhere else, where Shadows is like, go big, go broad, have lots of places where you can kind of, because most other systems train you to go as tight as possible, don't stretch out.
Well,
Yeah.
you got to be economical, so yeah. I mean, you get punished for that so bad in D&D.
Oh, very much so, yeah. If you're not if you're not specialized, you're screwed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what made Ivar such a unique character, is he was just crazy.
Yeah.
But like in a lovable kind of way. Like he wanted to be loved.
He was lovable towards the end. At the start, he was an ass, and even Douglas had a hard time dealing with him. But that's the difference between Ivar and his assholery and Max's. For whatever reason, everybody was like, yeah, he's disgusting, but he's kind of funny, so I'm staying around. Like, Max is just, like, abrasive. Like, hits up the front up until
Max
now.
is like, I'm going to shoot you.
Yeah, I feel like Ivar didn't make an effort to relate to people. He was like, I'm Ivar, this is me, just accept me as I am. And Max, like, actively pushes people away. So
Well, Max is trying to make people into something they're not. Like any true, I mean, he very true is that like extremist bigot in any sense who's like, no, my way is the only way, you're all wrong. Ivar was at least open to, Ivar could have been wrong, and he was okay with that.
Well, the thing about that...
You had the house train Ivar. He needed to be, potty
only
trained.
pee in this corner, not...
Where the toilet's at, yeah.
Yeah.
Not on Mr. Douglas's nice furniture, thank you.
No.
But you gotta say, the dice rolled Ivar's character development so well.
He was an interesting challenge for me to handle.
Well, I'm glad I was able to give you a challenge. I just love that his etiquette rolls would always come out really nice. Like,
yeah, whenever he needed to like put out the spark and glitter, he was able to do it. But I mean, yeah, he was the 2.0 magic wielder. These things are addictive. But he was the 2.0 magic. He was the 2.0 magic user. Now we've got 3.0 to consider, and it's off of that baseline.
yeah, and so
Danny.
I'm curious, Scott, what questions are there to explore with magic?
Yeah, given the fact that you're kind of fresh into it.
So, first, I would like to acknowledge the significant amount of work that you've done in the OneNote on the magic section. I have not put it all into the book yet, but you've laid out really, really nicely, the basic you took a very Scott approach to it, and I don't know if that was intentional or if we're like bleeding into each other, but like this very like universe level, like this is the concept of magic, and then like the basics, and then branching into the 3 types of casting.
Yeah.
So I think right now, because really Danny's done one enchantment
Yeah.
with
One very
the lightning.
yeah. Which is the
But
enchantment's
Hasn't Danny
interesting.
also like randomly opened portals by like
Well,
accident?
So
He didn't. Yeah,
so-
he reopened something that was already there, or it would have been impossible otherwise.
Yeah, so evocation. So the idea that evocation is like powered by you in a sense, and your breath, and you're like putting your oomph into it, right? Those are the only things that you can do quickly on the fly. And so that's been most of what Danny's done. That's has been like his combat magic has been, I'm gonna snatch something, I'm gonna repel something, I'm gonna throw some darts, that sort of thing. And those are all like actual spells that Brenner taught him
Mm-hmm.
that have like a known threshold, target, cost, everything.
You know, Scott, I think what captures the magic really well is that scene you sent me that I found on my own that you sent me.
Yeah, sorry.
Where Zeus is like, look, this, anything can be lightning bolt. It's the idea that
Yeah.
you are literally, it's all around you. You're just able to pull from it and you're able to channel from it. And it's to what degree is your character able to channel that? I mean, that's what I found with Ivar is his will increased and he got to those crazy numbers. All it was doing was his ability to draw more from the power that just naturally exists and channel it to whatever he wanted.
Like Shadows 3.0, that will does not matter as much as it did for Ivar's style casting.
Yeah. No.
Because you still have to hit that target.
Yeah.
You still have to hit that threshold. And so it's like
You
I'm
still
throwing-
have targets in the previous version.
Mhm.
It's just the difference now is you don't get as many dice to roll.
It's a lot harder to accomplish
Well-
both because your will, especially
Yeah.
at street level, is a lot lower
yeah.
at a 1 minimum.
Yeah.
And then the spell crafting at street level 2 is kind of in that same boat. You get like 1, 2 dice. You're just kind of like, you're not really.
Like my will is 6, right? But
Yes,
my evocation is rank 3. So that will being a 6 is great, but that doesn't give me 6 die to roll.
Yeah.
That gives me 3 because my rank in evocation is 3. And so
You got to build. I mean, that's what I like is it how Danny got the basically
my little bracelet.
your little bracelet, and it's almost like you have to have at street level more
Paraphernalia.
enchanted items to boost your ability
Yep.
Yeah.
versus just having an all-out natural ability that you build over
Well,
time.
and rolling an Ot 1 or whatever the fuck it was that I mean, that will literally be the device that Danny's whole fucking life is going to be about now. Like,
Yeah,
that
for
he's going to be
sure.
like, this thing need, have, always keep, no, like,
Yeah.
which it's going to be also, the other problem too is that because of the way that it's designed, and that's kind of what makes having a focus like that so dangerous, is that those who are magically inclined will be like, get that thing off his fucking hand. Like, find a way to
Right,
remove
Danny's
that.
gonna lose a hand. We know Danny's gonna lose a hand, right? Like,
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
the danger
Yeah.
of Danny right now is he has something, and you couple it with the fact that he's immature.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And it's like giving any teenager a car that they are not meant to have yet,
Oh, yeah.
let alone a girl.
Yeah, this was like he got the car and the girl together at the same time. And and it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, people are going to notice and they're going to want to take that, so.
You know what? That'll be an interesting sort of change in dynamic. Is do we get to a point where people now are just coming to basically rob Danny, and the group has to like, oh, like you're not robbing him. Like who the hell are you? He's our gravy
Yeah.
train.
Well, and so I kind of was allowed to improvise a little bit with that because I was not expecting to roll not one and have to forge some kind of weird thing together that would make sense. But I was like, well, he doesn't have a focus yet, so we can give him a focus if something comes up. And then it's like best fucking focus ever. Um, but the fact that it's modular and gives him a choice, I like that kind of shit anyway. Just because it's like, hey, you can have it kind of enhance over time, or you can just do this like big ass burst or something. I guaranteed, you get more or less one spell goes off at critical success once during an encounter. Like you're like, I know for a fact it's gonna go. Like you get that one freebie, and then the rest of it's whatever.
But like some of those fights that we had in the previous campaign
Mm-hmm.
that were going several rounds, like so doing the big burst isn't going to help. Like that's where you need to have those be, for the next 3 spells I cast, I'm going to get one guaranteed
Yeah.
hit. And even then, let's say
That may
Danny
just
Chung
prevent a
picks-
botch as opposed to doing anything
Right,
successfully.
like a static burst, right?
Yeah.
That's a target 8, threshold 2. Right now, with my evocation at 3, that means I've got to get 8 or higher on 2 of the 3 dice that I'm rolling.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be difficult to pull off. So it's good to have something like that. I don't want it to feel like it's overpowered, but we'll see how it plays. Most likely
It is an exceptional
to
piece of
use it.
equipment, but as you get to, because you will have eventually more than one focus as you go along, but they're not just littered in every Kmart. Like you have to.
This isn't Diablo, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to be dripping with socketed gems.
You
Um,
should.
So the question that I have is, so like in particular, the use of foci.
Foci.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I like never said that word out loud. Foci.
Yeah, foci.
Is very helpful for an evoker,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they're relying on the spot casting versus enchantment and alchemy, where you're taking your time out of combat, right? You're taking hours or days or weeks to write something out or inscribe, like literally etching into metal and all of that.
Yeah. Well, so your battle mages are going to be loaded with 3 things specifically. Like if you're going to go straight up, like this is where I love thinking about this. Like compare D&D wizard or battle mage to one of these guys. It's like if you were to equate levels, like if you were to say, okay, level 10 wizard from D&D and put it against somebody who is in the vicinity of a somewhere around like level 10, however you'd rate that, being at 10 sessions or whatever. But you put those two together, the battle mage from Shadows is way more fucking dangerous because you have no idea what they're holding onto. The 3 things that they possess would be some kind of warded material or armor that should help nullify, antagonistic spells. So there's always a chance that they get hit and nothing happens and they can move on. So there's that. They have their wards. The second important thing they'll have is going to have some kind of charm or talisman, and usually copies of them. Something with offensive spells already inscripted, either on like playing cards or small things that they can just stash. And all it takes is a single trigger, like throwing a word, something like that, to enact that spell and push it out. So they've got their own ammunition without having to expend all of their evocation work. And then they have the focuses that go into the evocation so that they can randomly do shit that does not conform to the rest of their arsenal. So you put those 3 things together and your battle mage is capable of doing all kinds of scary shit, and only 2/3 of it is somewhat quasi-predictable.
So when doing enchantment,
Mm-hmm.
when do you pay for the spell? Is it in the time that you're
Yeah.
putting pen to paper?
Yeah.
There's 2 things. It's the amount of time it takes to actually construct. If you use better materials, it will allow the enchantment to stay fresh longer. The expiration date pushes out. because all enchantments, all of them, have an expiration date. I can't remember the exact timing. It's like up to 2 weeks, something like that. But there's an automatic trigger in every single enchantment.
Oh, 3 weeks it says.
3 weeks. Okay, so
without expiring and causing ruptures or cascades.
Right, exactly. Because if you don't put that failsave at the end of that 3 week period, then it just basically corrodes. It basically acts like radiation and starts to fall apart. So the spells have a half-life. Nothing, We could use some more portals. Maybe it goes to the Silk Road. Who knows?
Well, I mean, if I recall, like anytime we did any type of enchantment, there is that sort of construction phase where you have to spend time channeling what magic you have to imbue it into an object.
Yeah,
So that's more like alchemy. The enchanting we did in the previous campaign is more like alchemy now.
Mm-hmm. In a sense, yeah,
Right.
creating artifacts. So the enchantments are, one, less complex. They don't require laboratory and equipment and the rest of that stuff, really. You can do enchantments fairly simplistically. The spells that you would put into them, you could even do really complex spells and put it into an enchantment, but the problem is the half-life. An enchantment, like evocation, is only a short-lived element. Alchemy really changes all of that up by, one, being incredibly heavy on extended rolls. That's the first thing. You have to use extended rolls. You don't have an option to do otherwise, which means that you're coming in every hour after you've recuperated and completing the cycle over and over and over. And then if you manage to get through the whole damn thing, there is no half-life. Whatever you've shoved into the object replenishes, resets, or stays continuous because the energy's on loop. But you have to be able to do that, and there's no way that that's actually a combat actionable thing to do. But it relies very heavily on, first of all, evocation being all of the spell working in its general sense and basic format and being able to just channel it without blowing yourself up. Then there's the enchantment, which is the next step above that, which allows you to kind of take it and put it into much more structured, into a much more structured method. And then once you get the method down and you have the enchantment part working, you can go into the realm of the greats, where you can actually alchemically combine these things and create permanent effects that actually last. And the thing about that is it's a build-up of both power and complexity, meaning that the threshold is based out of what the original spell is. Like if you wanted to create an object that I don't know why Fireball is always the one I think about. It just is. It's like
it's very evocative.
Well, I mean, it's also just kind of like, yeah, Fireball. Who wouldn't want that? But
yeah.
So if you wanted to do Fireball, for an example, as an evoker, you can just go like blah blah Fireball, right? It's over and done with. You've executed it, and as long as you don't sincerely screw things up, you won't blow yourself up with said Fireball. Right. That's the risk of doing the evocation, is that you could cause yourself to mutate or rupture or do all kinds of stuff. Hey there, Inky. Ooh. 4-month subscriber. Wow. 3-month streak. Nice. Yay! Got the burst of emotes.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the risk for evocation. Charms, you have to do correctly, or you wind up with the half-life problem where they corrode and become, absolutely detrimental in causing ruptures and all the rest of that stuff. So there's still, and if you botch an enchantment, you won't know until you try to execute it.
Ooh.
Yeah. So if there's an issue, you'll be like, I did fine. And if you have no way of knowing, then you're going to be like,
it's the poorly loaded shell in the shotgun chamber.
Right. Yep. And so the alchemical stuff is the same concept. So you're basically getting a multiplier of threshold as you're going along, in terms of the spell in and of itself. So Fireball being a basic battle type spell, not going to have a huge threshold. It's 1 or 2. You're dealing with energy that's already readily available and excitation of molecules in the air to create fire. You just need fuel, right? It's something that happens on its own, but you push it into the alchemical side and you go I want to have a ring that can store 3 of these things, and I can just huck them out, and then it resets every, after I've knocked 3 of them out, it takes an hour to reset. like something like that. So you conceive of this. Well, you have to compound that energy again and again and again and again and again and again until the more or less you could look at it like computer programming, where you're laying the foundation and making sure that every single piece is in place, and then you have to infuse that into the hardware, whatever the object is, and then you have to do it again without blowing yourself up, making an error in your own structure, and then not suffering huge levels of fatigue, which diminish your capacity to be able to do it in the first place.
Yeah, Danny doesn't, no pun intended, have the discipline to alchemy. It's too much rigor for him.
Yeah. So, and you also have to have a ritual site laboratory, whatever you want to call it. You have to have something set up in order to do that, because you'll create charms. This is where the charm part comes in. You'll create charms that will eat your ones, more or less, up to a certain point. You basically get 5 of those into your little ritual space, and then you start your rolls. Ones that come up, instead of giving you fatigue, those charms feel the corrupted magical element, and then the charm bursts into flame or breaks. And so you get 5 of those throughout, which means you get 5 failures over an extended roll to stop you from having serious issues. So there's like a whole setup for it. It's kind of fun whenever I thought it up, but it's a process that cannot be executed in anything less than a day. Like weak alchemical objects are done in a day or so. Yeah, and that's the reason why I called it alchemy too, because it's a matter of
Yeah.
transmogrification. You're basically taking something mundane and making it magical. It's takes a second. Little
I love
education
this.
there.
Like think of Excalibur, right? Like
Yes.
as an example.
Yep.
Loving that.
Yep.
Oh, Ken's on a ghost tour right now.
Ooh.
It's late. What's it, like 10:30 there?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, let me see. So we do need some more spells, I think.
Yeah. We need a lot more common spells, which is what I'm going to be trying to push my head towards. Is making
Well,
up some
your common
stuff.
spells be things like elemental magic. So
Well-
I can summon the fire, ice. I can,
So the way that the common spells is supposed to basically fit into this, as broadly, is that more or less I want freeform magic to be the thing that everybody's excited about, but I want a plethora of magic that's already been established in the game, so that you can just go like, oh, if I want to do A, B, C, or D, it gives a lot of the people that are super into the crunchy numbers to go in there like, I want these spells for this mage character I have, and they don't have to think. Like, they don't have to sit there and go, I have to come up with all this extra stuff.
magic
I
missile.
love the spells that are already there, because they're not powerful, but they're creative, and I think that they'll give players an idea of non-standard fireball, ice ball, lightning blast. Like I'm projecting a thing out and zapping you.
Right. Which is your favorite
So-
though? Then
Parlor tricks. It's parlor tricks.
Well,
Oh.
I mean I love Dart for its pure functionality, but
Yeah.
I really like Snatch. Like it's it's the Jedi like force zhup, like
Yep.
to his hand.
Yeah.
And it's so like I've been watching Daredevil, right?
Yeah.
So like I think about the way that he has like this like spatial map based on what he's hearing, what he's smelling, like all the things that he's not seeing, but like how he's developed this map, and like how many times he's able to throw something and then step or put his hand where it will be. And if you're relying on your eyes, you'll never get that. But like he's seeing it this different way, and it looks great on screen. And so what I want is like for Danny, because my original characterization of him was that he very Gambit style infused cards with magic,
Mm-hmm.
and would throw them at people. That he does some like prestidigitation type flourishes, and that he didn't know he was doing magic, right? That he was doing this real subtle snatch to like flourish cards around and stuff. And so when I saw that as like one of the spells, I was like, yeah, that explains it. That's a thing Danny's been doing, that he just his little tug, or then its counterpart, the repel,
Right.
right? Those seem like basic concepts that you would want to pull or push. Like, it
Yeah.
makes sense. I love that. But I'm excited to try some of these other ones that are like fuse, touch two objects together and fuse them permanently. Like,
Yeah.
not that Danny's going to become a welder and right, like start doing that, but like something like that, that's a real creative use of magic.
Right, because like if you have a
Um,
broken handle or something and you can't move it, you're just like fuse the handle directly to the object and start yanking that sucker out.
yeah, and and then you've got like eavesdrop and mute and things like that. That again, I think are just really clever ways that would give a player inspiration to think about when they're freeforming a spell, how they're gonna do it, instead of like, well, I'm gonna do 3 fireballs or something, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, like, think about it a little more
Yeah.
creativity there. So I asked our viewers, what spell would you like to see, and Inky said mist.
Mist. Well, that could be all kinds of things. Yeah.
Like, to create some fog or mist to obscure an area or something, provide you with cover.
Yeah, that would totally work, and that would be right up the, right up the realm of obfuscation, stealth, diversion. Yep.
Yeah, being sneaky.
It could also be something that would be easily discounted as technological as well. Like if you were to do it in certain ways, like having the mist erupt from your person somewhere, it could easily be
Right.
considered some kind of a smoke, like a what the hell is it called? Like a smoke machine or something like that. Some means of
Yeah.
like sending out flares when you're being shot at with a missile. It's the same kind of idea. You're using countermeasure, some kind of countermeasure to give everybody, which brings in the other thing too, which is like another really simple but very important thing, would be like the spell of like aura sight or something like that, where you're able to perceive, biological, magical auras, and then like allow it to penetrate through certain things so you can kind of see what's going on.
Yeah. It's just it's cool stuff. Now, one of the things that I was wondering about, because we don't, in our system, there's not like holy magic versus
Right.
arcane magic versus nature magic, right? It's not divided into schools of magic, where there's
Yeah.
like necromancy and thaumaturgy or something, like, it doesn't have like those sorts of things. So how would healing, because we talk about magical healing,
Yeah.
how would healing come into play magically? Would it be, or are there many different ways to get there?
So magically, the way you'd want to look at it is that you can heal the body through various means, right? You can do a strictly physical type of healing magic where you force the tissues, like if you have a cut or laceration, you can force the tissues to come back together again,
Fuse.
and then
Just fuse. I'm watching
It's-
Daredevil. He cauterized to do road flare. Right?
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
road flare.
It's freaking dirty, but if you don't have a better option, it
Yeah.
stops the bleeding. Like, the flesh would refuse over itself because the material is already in use, right?
Yeah.
So you're using fuse to do something, but you would basically fuse it with something else, right? Because you need the two materials. But you can take fuse and you can go, well, let's say we just, something like mend would be a much closer like acumen to it, but it would be the same concept. Like I would probably call it staunch. Like it'd be that like dirty use of blood stopping where you just touch and the flesh reseals itself over the wound in a rather rapid fashion. But like I said, it's a dirty fix. It's not one that has any kind of real elegance to it. You just stop the person from dying.
So, like, there's one here. So I'm looking in the OneNote, right?
Yeah.
And there's the list under evocation of like rank 1
Stop
spells and stuff.
dying.
And then there's like this second list on the side
Yeah.
that is like it has, and I don't know if these are enchantments because it's saying like materials are bone and claw.
There's a lot of it that I was basically messing with on that second
Okay.
list that I'm trying to like, okay, do I want this to have a material attached to it? Do I not want it? Like I was thinking like what materials would I think of that would go with this? Like just trying to like
Yeah.
I don't know, it was more or less of a
Oh, yeah.
lore foundational type. What do I think about whenever I'm trying to do this? And so it was just throwing it together in one big thing. You know, and
Okay. Because
yeah.
I love this Band-Aid fix. And here's what I like about this is, and I don't actually know if it's written in here at all. But God, Inky. The Sovereign Soul.
Yes.
You've mentioned this. I can't actually find it written down anywhere. And I'm
Oh.
like, did I hallucinate this?
No,
But,
I've discussed it. The whole-
Okay,
yeah.
so the idea that that you can't cast magic on a target unless they're willing without like fighting them for it, even healing.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to properly be in consent of it because their soul automatically stops the cosmic flux from getting in. It's naturally resistant to that because it's already set in a cosmic way. It's already set to be perfectly balanced. And so what you're trying to do is unbalance it to do something it's not meant to do.
And you're like, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah, it's basically like hard, like it's like machine script at the bottom, going like, you can't fuck with this. This is the bottom line. Like,
but like, I love the idea of like healing. I mean, if you look at it as like you're making a modification to the body, that your body's going to resist it unless you're willing, right?
Yeah.
Just as much as if I was trying to separate your arm from your body.
Yeah.
Like your body's going to resist it unless you're willing. And so I just love that idea. And I think that is one thing that makes this system unique is unless someone is like unconscious in, you know, like let's say in D&D, then they can't save. If they're unconscious, they have no saving throw against you casting a spell at them, even an offensive one. But in this, it is like you have to affirmatively consent to having, you know, a healing spell done on you.
Yep.
Or you have to completely like overpower.
Yeah. You have to overwhelm their defenses system in order to get in there. Because the reason why that was the case is because I consider living things to be magical in and of themselves, and trying to screw with the natural magic that's already there. You're dealing with an intelligence that is infinitely complex, and it's going to be like, yeah, no, I've set this up already. There's no reason for you to be dicking with it. And well, and so this is what it boils down to, and you can probably notate this because I've got a couple of things when it comes to magic in particular, like healing. I'm trying to contemplate if this would make sense, and it's been rolling around in my head for a little bit, but I'm like, I have an excuse to make shit you not healing potions that are totally like non-cheat tongue-in-cheek in here. And it's basically because if you swallow anything, like if you swallow something, you're naturally accepting whatever's in it. So
like
protein shakes.
Yeah, like
you've consented
exactly
to the act of consumption.
Yes. And I'm going like that would mean that you could actually have a health potion on your person, and if somebody's unconscious, you could pour that into their system, and that's like a natural backdoor, so to speak, of the program.
It reminds me of, I just watched...
although I don't want backdoor to be used when taking a magical potion. That's not the...
Delirium. Where they basically like, here, get into this magic table and it's going to heal you. Here, take these pills and they're going to keep the radiation from killing you. So why not? Why can't you have something? This is the 21st century or the
Yeah.
22nd century. Like, you get the
So
good stuff.
Grayley, we're doing world building tonight because Ken's not with us.
She was just concerned about
because-
the backdoor health potion, which
Well,
we're not sticking with that theory.
No.
These potions do not require hose and funnel. That is not what we're after.
Yeah. Although, like, if you're a cyborg, maybe you do need an oil change every once in a while, right?
Oh god, not something I want to contemplate.
Is that
That's
better?
oh, which is the other you just brought up cybernetics. This is the other thing. I had one other idea about cybernetics. I almost want cybernetics to be a little bit easier to hit with magic, and there's one reason why. You're missing natural bodily components that would be part of the original construction of your form. So that would mean that even a guy who's in a wheelchair, who's all screwed up and deformed, would have a better defense magically than somebody who's a cyborg and chopped shit off and added all these kinds of parts and pieces.
Oh, because, like, your body's... Okay, so I always bring everything to comics, but, like, Superman. Why doesn't Superman's suit get ripped to shreds?
Right.
He gets shot at with bullets. And one of the ideas put out there in someone's comic run was that his skin, like his like Kryptonianness, like extends almost like this little barrier around him that is, very, very small.
Right.
But that's how like his suit doesn't friction burn off when he's like zipping if he's running fast, or how it doesn't get bullet holed to death.
Well, and I would
Right.
actually even have an easier explanation. It's of Kryptonian make, right? The material is
That was
literally
my
of
argument.
Krypton, of Krypton. Therefore, its density and the rest of it are going to be really strange in terms of property.
In some versions, yes. In some versions, his mom made it for him. Like,
Yeah.
So like, how was she able to like sew a costume out of the same stuff that is bulletproof?
It's comic books. Who the fuck needs continuity?
Kryptonian needles, clearly.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of having an aura, like the same thing that aura sight is able to see.
Mhm.
Maybe your body has this natural, barrier that says like I exist in this world, and as you remove that arm and replace it with you almost have like a dead zone of
Right.
no body aura
Well, because
protection.
it's mechanical. It's machine. It's
Right.
not a living thing, and
Yeah.
therefore it doesn't have that. It's connected to.
And all the way through to your fingertips.
Right. You're getting
You know.
feedback and natural things because the technology is compensating for your
Yeah.
limitation, but that does not mean that your sovereign soul has completely encompassed whatever's going on in here.
I like that idea. And that kind of works with stuff we've talked about before, where there's almost like a scale, like or spectrum between the magical and the mechanical, right?
Yeah.
So that you can't be fully decked out in magic and then put on a mech suit, or have a cybernetic arm that you're casting spells through, like that there's some takeaway there.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, these things should have like continuity amongst each other. There should be this kind of sense of being, because I'm approaching this game like a writer approaches a story. You have to establish, like specifically when it comes to magic in particular, which is so damn complicated. There has to be certain rules, and those rules have to be exciting. I'm not nearly as rules oriented as say Brandon Sanderson, but I want.
Yeah.
But what's funny about the way that he does it is that they're concrete. So this is going to be a hard magic system of a sort, so that you can just go like, oh, once I know the rules, I get it, and then you can kind of go with it, like you know what to expect.
I like the idea of you can't color outside the lines, but you can use whatever colors you want inside the lines. Like,
Yeah.
so you have these like very strict, outer edge guidelines, but then within that, like, have fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that Sanderson's magic that he talks about specifically is the strength is in its limitations, right?
Yes.
Like, so
What's the
if
cost
you
and all that other stuff? Yeah.
right, so having all those things, because if you could,
Yeah, just pew
you
pew
know,
pew 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 pew. What's the
I
point?
like made a game, for my kids, and like we're walking home from school, and we played last night, so they're talking about, all this, and like, well, what are you gonna do here? Like, oh, well, I'll just like sink into the ocean and reappear on the other side of the world, and like save them. And I was like, okay, then the game's over. Like, you just won. Oh,
Yep.
well, that's not what I want to do. I'll just cast a spell to find the missing person. Great, game's over. You won. Like, you
Yeah.
know, you need to have some conflict that you need to resolve, and things
Yeah,
like
it's
that. You
what
need to have
it's
some
that's the excitement
limitations.
part of it. It's like how can you fit
Yeah,
these pieces together so that they actually do something of note? It gives you a sense of accomplishment, and it also
yeah,
makes it more real because nobody here on Earth, it's relatable. Nobody on Earth gets it for free. Yeah, it's like you
right,
have to figure this shit out somehow. Everything's got some kind of mystery puzzle. Some kind of action is required in order for it to function. You don't just right now we got a computer, we can just plug it in, turn it on, and off it goes. Like that's but the amount of time it took to create something like that, I mean, that's kind of the rule, is that you may have these extraordinary things, but the amount of time and effort and discipline it took to create it has to be there. Otherwise it just feels ethereal. It doesn't, it's like fantastic, I could just do it. Like it seems a little boring.
right.
um But but this is the speaking of cost. That's the whole point of tolerance in this, is that
Yeah,
you can't escape it. And if you roll lots of ones, if you roll like shit, even if you have great luck, you're gonna be like beep beep beep, like you're just gonna start totaling out, because it goes along with that same cosmic concept. Is like you're screwing with forces that are a part of creation. You're not gonna just like run amok with this and get away with it forever.
and that was like that last spell that Danny cast,
Hmm.
right? So I had specifically taken the Soul Burn major milestone,
Right.
where you gain a bonus up to your will to spellcraft for a single spell. Once it's been cast, you suffer exhaustion, with a penalty to the die rolls equal to the previous bonus. So if I'm going to pour a bonus of 5 into it, then I'm going to suffer, 5 exhaustion as a result of it.
Hmm.
And then I like keyed up my new, fetish that gave me 3 automatic successes. And so it's like I poured a lot into that spell. I still barely made the threshold.
Yeah.
Like I rolled I think 9 d10s,
Yeah. It was
and the
something like
target
that.
was 10,
Hmm.
which means if I hit something, I'm exploding. And like I think I even only then I still had to spend luck to negate a 1. So even then, with all of these other things working in my favor, ripping open a portal that's trying to not exist,
Yeah.
reverse engineering a portal that we didn't create, that we don't know how it works and all that stuff, was near impossible. And one of my favorite game concepts, that someone in the RPG creator group had come up with, was failure with consequences, failure with severe consequences, success with consequences, success with severe
Right.
consequences, right? And so we got success with consequences.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you did technically grab that portal and goats it open and climb through, but you're not where you needed to be, you're not where you want to be, and now
Yeah.
you are exhausted, like capital E exhausted.
Hmm.
um and as the only spellcaster in the group, I don't have a cult or an Ivar to balance off of me. So now I'm just gonna go take a nap for a few days.
Yeah.
No, actually, that is a really good point. There really is no other magic user to balance out your character.
Silva, kind of, but she's very
She's knowledgeable,
specialized.
not mystical. That's the thing.
Yeah,
She knows a
and we just
lot of
took
shit
her
about
out
the
of her.
occult.
The same
We
with
just took her out of her spot.
yeah,
Yeah.
the same with Bill's character. He just, by being a vampire, knows about this stuff. but he doesn't dabble in it.
Right.
He flails himself for his misdeeds.
I mean, literally, right? As a devout, you know, Catholic vegan
Yeah.
vampire,
Oh my god, it's
he's
so fucking
probably
difficult.
flagellating. Like, he's got a hairsuit and everything.
So yeah, like the cost is there and the difficulty is there, and that's what I really like about the combination of target and threshold. Whenever you're doing those rolls, target is one thing that's hard enough, but the threshold makes it even worse, and it's kind of a multiplier exponent. It just kind of like
Yeah.
goes like a lot bigger because you go really high target and say 3 threshold, you're like, yeah, like you get an immediate sense of like that shit's hard, man. Like
Yeah, and I have to say that as someone who's been casting spells in this, I definitely I appreciate it's not Vancian magic. I'm not gonna like use up my spell slots, right?
right, yeah.
As long as my body can handle it, I can keep, doing spells over and over. If the dice are with
that was
me.
a good addition. Is the ability that you do get fatigued. Otherwise, magic users are invincible.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you
having
have
that
to have a way
exhaustion
to
come in.
check. You have to exhaust them.
And we haven't had to deal with ruptures or cascades yet, but it's coming.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it will
yeah.
eventually happen. And the other
Push
thing
that
too,
envelope.
yeah, the other thing as well is that ruptures in particular just do damage. Cascades have all kinds of crazy shit that can happen. Like Danny can end up mutated because
Yeah, I'm expecting Danny to end up with a horn or something like a tail or something like that eventually.
yeah, sort of
like,
de-evolve in some direction.
Definitely retreat to like Dart, right? I retreat back to that when I try to do something more and it fails, and I'm like, I'm going back to my comfort zone of my target 7 threshold 1. Right? Like instead of like I'm gonna go, do this other big thing and it doesn't work, and I'm like, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to just using my cantrip, right? Like
Yeah.
the little
You have to push
1d8.
your character.
Yeah, and he
to
does.
try
For
those
sure.
things, and if it succeeds, you get cocky, and if it fails, you get cocky. But
Right.
by doing that, you grow the character. And D, I don't know if you still have this, but I always felt that whenever we did that with Ivar or the Colt, there was sort of a once you've done it, it becomes a little bit easier to do.
Moderately. So that's the whole thing about going, okay, you have your own personal grimoire, which Danny will start to develop on his own. He will start to master his own crazy-ass evocations, and what will happen is that it will become a common spell, which means that Threshold and the rest of it pop down. So the risk to himself becomes even less, and the ability to perform it becomes greater. So he gets that tilt.
Yeah, so we talked
I
about
like
how the
that.
target
I'm wondering,
lowers.
would that be worth adding as a milestone? A sort of the idea that a spell becomes commonplace.
Well, I wouldn't do that. I would make a milestone. First of all, it'd have to be a major milestone because it's dealing with magic.
Absolutely.
Right. In order for it to become a
there's
major
something.
milestone, what I was thinking about in certain cases was creating something called spell mastery, or basically you pick something that you've done so freaking much that it becomes something that is almost innate, almost like a power.
Couldn't it just be a general mastery? Like, hey, you've mastered some skill. Choose one of your skills, and you are now a master of it, and you can get, X bonus.
Well,
Evocation mastery is a major milestone, and I like this one. The target and threshold for improvised magic are lowered by 1.
right. So you get like the benefit.
You've done enough evocation that you know the rules a little bit, and you know how to freeform a little bit. And then there's Mystic Focus, where suspending common spells through concentration no longer causes a die penalty. So you've done those concentration-oriented spells so many times that you can now hold on to that without getting that overtime penalty, which is another thing that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
Concentration
Yeah.
costs. It's
Yep.
not a It's not a I'm just gonna spend my minor action concentrating. It's like you basically spend points until
It
you
eats
run
your
out,
power
and then you
reserve.
can't.
Yeah. So, if you want to sustain a spell using evocation, you create effect, right? And you're wanting to hold it in place. Fine. Problem is that it costs you a die. So if you only have 3, in Danny's case, if he wants to create a spell, hold it in place, and then keep casting, he's at 2 dice now instead of 3.
Yeah.
And if he does another one successfully and holds it, then he's down to 1 die, and he's holding the other 2 spells in action. So that's...
We started that towards the end with Ivar, and I thought it was such an interesting concept where it's like, yeah, you want to hold this other thing and then do this other item, it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like
It's just
eavesdrop, right, is one that requires you focusing on a single object and you're holding that, and then that, drops you down. Warmth is another one where you effectively raise your body temperature, and like this little aura around you gets warmer. That requires concentration. Hold the door.
Yep.
You touch a gate or a door that you wish to remain fixed in place, and then you have to concentrate to hold it. And it can still be broken through with a body check.
Would it be, I'm wondering here, it's something I love about Shadows is you write the structure versus giving the, specific items, just the general, here's the general rule here. I'm wondering, do we benefit more by having sort of that free form of saying, here's sort of the boundaries of what you can do, go have fun, and it leaves it up to the imagination
Well, yeah, see,
of the players and the...
That is the freeform magic lure that I'm throwing in there. Like I said, the common spells, that's to get everybody's feet wet. Because I remember trying to play Mage the Ascension for the first time. And that was an overwhelming idea. Because Mage used this dice, the way that I'm using it here, with the pools and the rest of it. The difference was that they were combining abstracts with like the various spheres plus your arete and all this other junk was sort of thrown in. This is just like you've got things that are coming in from your stats. It's a reworking of the idea, but it's the same die mechanic, right?
Yeah.
But the way that the freeform still works is you want to conjure up something. It's kind of up to the GM at this point. That's kind of where the license comes in. You go like, I want to do this really insane, crazy thing with this magical spell that's just out of nowhere. Instead of having to deal with like the vulgarity and the paradox and all that other junk, it's more of the GM gets to go like, okay, that's insane. You're probably going to blow yourself up, and the effects are kind of immediate as opposed to maybe. And it's the rupture and cascade and all that other stuff could be the consequence, but more than that, the difficulty might be just flat out of your freaking range. So like you want to do something where it's like, hey, I want to fly like at 100 miles an hour without it doing anything to me, and I want to get to this other side. It's like you're a rank
4.
Yeah, it's like a threshold 4 probably, and you're a rank 2 evoker. So no, yeah, it's not going to work.
Or you're going to get that by using this charm on your wrist.
Right.
Put yourself out of your weight class, and then when it fails,
lucky, and now you're in debt.
Right.
Like, congratulations, kid. You figure out how to put the bullet in your dad's gun, and now you pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Natural consequence is a GM's best friend, and when it comes to magic, it gets so much worse.
You're going to fly 100 feet in the air, and now your magic has stopped, and you're 100 feet in the air. What are you doing now?
No, I think that line right there needs to somehow be embedded, like at the start of, like, here are the 10 rules you need to know as GM, and it's like natural consequences.
Well, there's going to be a GM section in the book.
Yeah.
Well, no, I know there will be, but I almost feel like there's like your 10 commandments, and number one's got to be you're running off natural consequences.
Yeah. Well, and that's my principle of GMing in general. Like I don't tell the players what to do. I don't tell them how to do it. I can tell them what is possible, what is not possible in the immediate moment, and I can deliver the consequences based on whatever actions they've taken. And it's just that's all there is to it. That's all GMing kind of really is if you boil it down.
Well, I want to take a step back to this idea of the common spells.
Yeah.
I found as I developed and Ivar developed, what happened was at first I had a really hard time coming up with what I mean, this guy's powers are basically unlimited, but
Yeah,
they were
you
limited.
were Wanda.
Yeah, but they were limited by my imagination. But as the game played, scenarios came up and just said, "Okay, let's just try some random thing, let's shoot shit out my ass and see what happens." Um, and it's in doing that that I started to
Wanda.
actually develop Ivar's common spells
Yeah.
and had a list of
That's
them like,
true.
that there's something to be said about through the storytelling, your character will develop their repertoire. And knowing, again, the general principles of what you can and can't do, or, hey, you can try it, but, you don't want to fly 100 feet in the air without having a, plausible way to deal with the after effect when the magic runs out.
Right. Yeah. Talk to Johnny Nine Fingers about how to properly pack a firework. Right. Like.
Yeah. That's
No,
but that's the freeform lure. Like I said, that is exactly right. Yep.
And I think that, for Danny, he benefited from having Brenner early,
Yeah.
who's like, let me show you some basics so that you don't kill yourself, trying to do something fun. But then what did Danny do? He, threw a temper tantrum and summoned a bog witch. Like,
Yeah.
Thanks, kid.
right? He freaked out and opened a portal. Like,
You know what he reminds me of is when you first start learning to drive.
yeah,
You're
and you
like,
overcorrect and you overbrake.
yeah, like, oh my
and
God, I
yeah.
have to make this left-hand turn, and I'm going to give it way more gas than it needs. Oh my God, now my car's spinning out of control, so I'm going to slam on the
I'm gonna
brakes.
slam the brakes.
Why did I just hit this curb? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that in many ways is what I see your
And
character
I'm gonna
doing all
run.
the time.
Right.
And then I'm going to run and hide, and then hope Daddy fixes it.
Yeah. No, I think it's. I like how the magic works. And I think that we're benefiting from getting a good playtest run of it because nothing feels imbalanced for me. I'm certainly frustrated when the spells don't go my way, and only because Barrack was like perhaps too easy to like. I'm just gonna spray bullets at this, like it was very. So I get it. So when Danny's trying to do a spell, and that I don't get like three spells to cast in a turn.
Right.
When Barrack was like, I'm gonna get 3 attacks.
So here's something I'm really curious about with the new system. How often would you say, just ratio-wise, are spells failing versus succeeding?
I'd say I'm probably at about 50%.
Yep. Agreed.
Because I
Now-
tried to do in our first like Central Park fight, I did it fizzled and then I like overkilled and got like 4 explosions, like, so that there was that. And then in our weird like sucked into a portal combat, I just failed, like everything
Yeah.
failed there.
And you didn't die?
And no, I didn't die. I didn't get once. So it's like failure with consequence, right? Like my target was a 7 and I rolled like 3 6s. But because our luck is so low, then I could, again, like if I was in the previous campaign, sure, I'll spend 3 luck to raise those 3 rolls up to a 7. I only have 2 luck, which means 1 explosion or 2 +1s. And I used an explosion earlier and that didn't do it. Like, So yeah, I would say probably around 50%. Maybe of like 10 spells cast, I probably hit on 5 of them. Now, like narratively speaking, I've done the snatch and repel like in the apartment with the baseball or whatever, you know, at a much higher success rate. But
Well,
in
because he's had
combat,
time to sit there and concentrate and really just kind of work it
yeah,
through.
Which, no,
but
that
like
makes sense.
in
Yeah.
combat, Danny's, he's got that like
A bit fried.
performance anxiety,
Now, is the gameplay
Stage
going to
fright.
account for as you develop that statistic of failure should start to drop as you do more common spells that you do regularly?
Anything that's of the lower levels. So, like, what'll happen? Like, if we were to let's project a little bit, Danny gets stretched out, and let's say that he's now some years later in game, and he's had a chance to practice all this stuff, right? All of his major struggles, even in combat, most of those have probably vanished by now, and easily from the mechanical sense, anything between like 1 and 3 threshold is within the realm of possibility and doing without having much trouble. Mainly because he's got a few things in playing for him. First of all, he's probably going to be working with a lot more common spells, some of his own making. He's going to have a lot more foci on his person to help boost his numbers anyway. So he'll have more guaranteed successes at his disposal to begin with, and a lot more power, just raw dice, to add into his rolls whenever he doesn't quite have enough to make it happen. And then,
like the things that'll eat failures.
yep,
Right.
he'll get those charms that basically stop the exhaustion from hitting him when he's in the middle of doing his stuff. There might even be charms that he can use on his person that allow him to be able to absolve the spell and cause it to fizzle,
He's gonna
even if it
develop
botches.
a drug. He's going to develop a drug addiction. He's going to find some drug that he'll take, and he'll get rid of the exhaustion, and he's going to keep taking it.
Well, see,
And
that's
then-
that's the funny part, is that the spell working and the rest of it, he can take stims all he wants, but he has to make sure that he does a rest of some kind that is mentally restful, like not just mentally but inwardly restful. Because you have to take that nap, or you have to meditate, or you have to do something that allows the dispersal of all that extra energy you've been funneling through yourself. If you don't get rid of that sediment,
You
then
need
it
to
just
defrag
hangs.
your drive.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty freaking accurate. But
Well, and like the threshold is fixed, right? There's not like
yeah,
like Dart is the one that he's been using most. That has a target number of 7, threshold of 1. There's not like a Dart 2 that is a threshold 2,
yeah.
right? There's not a Dart Aga that's like a
No,
threshold
but I
5.
can see him eventually taking
So-
Dart and saying, how can I play with this? Can I, like,
Yeah.
imbue it with
So
water?
Dart will be a threshold of 1, which right now is a third of Danny's dice. But if eventually his evocation is up to like an 8, the
Yeah.
chances of him getting 1 success is much higher.
Yeah.
And then with common spells, with the target number lowering by 1, as it becomes like one that you're very, very comfortable with, then
I like
instead
it.
of being 7 or higher, it becomes a 6 or higher, right? Like that works its way out.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that threshold
You can
threshold
still fail.
threshold is static for
know that.
one reason. It demonstrates the amount of power minimum to create the effect. End of story. If you have a threshold 5 spell you're trying to accomplish, it basically says it's like you're trying to use a AAA battery when you need a D battery to make this work.
Yeah.
You don't have enough. Which is why your rank and discipline are, your rank and the discipline you're
Yeah.
using is important for Threshold 2.
I really see an ancillary book of just metaphors by D. Here's your analogies, kid. Have fun.
Okay, so I have one question. There's a little side note from Ken
Yeah.
that says
I
Your
call it
discipline.
10 threatening.
your discipline level cannot go above your current will.
Right. And at the moment, I have not enacted that. Because I think,
Okay.
yeah, I haven't enacted that yet. Because
I mean-
again, that was another one of those, like, do I want to have another
Um,
cap on it to try and make it more interesting, or...
Yeah. Well, and there is a cap on will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Now I don't know if there is a cap. Is there a cap on discipline? Like at 10?
Most discipline ranks do tap out at 10.
Yeah.
And by that point, you shouldn't need more. And the reason why is because, like, if you do, because it would follow the same principle of 10 plus, goes everywhere over the sheet, which is, you know, if you have over 10, you're not rolling more than 10 dice, because nobody should have to take a child pool and roll the whole fucking thing onto the table to get their result. 10's pushing it
The
anyway.
sheet pan that you just
Yeah.
shake back and forth.
Fucking dumping it out. And that was the one thing about, like, playing White Wolf Exalted that I couldn't take. I was rolling 30 plus dice for each singular thing, and it was like then just dumping this mass pile. I'm like, I don't know. Like, there's a billion fucking numbers down here.
Fuck it.
Shadowrun also use die pools.
It does, yeah. D6s in particular, and they get pretty huge too.
Yeah.
Um,
That's where the fun of a roller helps, right? That
yeah, that's where
all right.
you go digital and it's a lot
40d6,
easier.
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm looking forward to, because I very much, like Ken said, we've been watching Owl House, right? And Inky and I have been watching, and we're like almost done with the series. But the use of runes there is really cool, and it's essential because, you know, not to spoil it, but of all of the characters can naturally do magic of some kind, but humans can't. And so they have, because they don't have like a bile sac or something like that in their body that lets them do magic, so they have to do with a rune.
Right.
And so that's the main character does this rune magic, and she over time starts seeing runes in objects. So she's like looking at a plant, and she sees this little shape in the plant, and then she draws it in the dirt and taps it, and a plant grows. Right? So she's like figuring out how to unlock nature in a way.
Yeah,
So
she's.
I made these little runes.
I would call her an arcane architect.
Yeah. So I made this little like set of 5 runes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think the fun that Danny will have is trying to figure out how to link these together in different ways to make them functional. And
I almost see him drawing them, but it's like he has really bad handwriting. It's like I can't read with your ruin, and then one day he like just gets it right, and it just like glows and starts doing something awesome. And he's like, oh, you mean
because he's
me?
done the one, the lightning trap,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, that was like a piece of paper that when you touch it, like a bolt of lightning flies down from the sky.
Yep.
And that's terrifying. But in the role playing part of that, it was, you know, I was given to believe that was a very complicated rune that involved like inscribing the same thing over and over and over in a very specific way, and all that stuff. It wasn't like he just went air plus fire plus void equals lightning, and then like just, you know, drew those 3 things, because then you're gonna hit a limitation.
Yeah, and the limitation being it's too broad. Because if you do
Right.
air, if like you throw all these elements together, it's like like
Now
that.
it's
There's
gonna
no.
throw hot water.
Yeah. yeah.
I'm trying to warm my tea up.
Yeah, so I like that idea, and I like the power of intention, right? You
Mhm.
have to know very clearly what you're trying to do, and some of that gets poured into it when you're enchanting.
Yeah, because it's
So,
two
yeah.
things. Yeah, you're basically the way that enchantment works that leads into alchemy is that evokers just use their concentration, and that's a hidden process, because what they do is that they're shaping the magic inside of themselves in a non-physical way, producing the effect because their brain's doing all the computing work. When you try to do it into an enchantment, you don't have the physical computer anymore. You're trying to copy-paste a program directly onto something that's inert. And being able to do that requires a little trick. So,
Well, it's moving from the metaphysical to the physical
yeah.
in the nature of how you're going to handle it.
Yeah, you have to come up with the actual function and formula for it to do its thing. And, you know, because instinctually it's like the difference between going like, hey, look at what I can do. But mathematically, that whole operation is ridiculous. the actual angles and everything that comes into it, like all the muscles involved. There's such a huge mathematical thing happening just by waving my arm back and forth, and that's
It's
what
like
you're doing.
throwing
Is
a curveball versus the math formula for a curveball.
right. You're dealing with the actual mathematical description of the object doing its thing. In this case, it is a mathematical arcane formula of a sort, where you're composing this, and unfortunately, because of the way that magic kind of works, it doesn't rely heavily on the mathematical side of it, because that's what technology does. Technology and math are the way that it composes itself, and this is abstract. It's the abstract and the cosmic coming together and using the illogical to formulate what it's doing, because it's all built out of that intent and composite.
When technology and magic interact, that's when things are like they used to be.
Those are good old days.
The good old days.
Yeah.
Shit ain't right.
But yeah, I mean, like, so, and I was thinking about one other thing as well, because of the tolerance and the rest of it, and I was like, because you had asked a while back, Scott, about, like, does this apply to anything else? And I started pushing some things together on World Anvil, and it dawned on me that it would be actually really great to have Will undergo the same sort of exhaustion penalties that you'd get with using magic. The difference being is that when you roll the Will Essence checks, in fact, any Essence check could technically fall into that category of exhaustion. It still could fit easily into that. So anything could fit into the tolerance category. Originally I had it isolated because I was like, I don't know, I kind of like magic being part of that. But then again, whenever we're dealing with magic, we're dealing with the base components and the fundamental structures. And that's what an essence check is. It's in the name, essence. It's the fundamental structure of whatever it is that you're trying to do. And I was like, well, a will check would be interesting to use tolerance in, because supernatural beings, while they are physiologically resistant to having certain things go wrong, if they are tested in their will through magic and other things, that could give players a little edge over the top of the supernatural, because maybe they can take the hit once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, but after a while they start to kind of like weaken out, because yeah, they've got lots of will, but they keep going blah, 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 and you eventually wear them down. And that would go for anybody, technically, wouldn't it? Because you could wind up with anyone, anywhere. It's kind of one of those, it leans itself into becoming a universal mechanic for the system, and I kind of want to play with it. I want to see if tolerance could work that way, because I think it would make tolerance a lot of fun, because it would also play into other things, right? But I want to make sure I can differentiate how magic functions, because tolerance would have an immediate effect on... because if you take exhaustion for just doing body checks and the rest of it, makes the game super fucking gritty, which to me works fine.
Right.
Because it's like, you could sit there, struggle, push hard, and do all these other things. You get that exhaustion there, and trying to cast magic is like, fuck. Like, it makes sense. It does make sense to have it do that way. But do I want to play Shadows on hard mode is the question I keep asking myself.
Well, here's the question that I'm wondering right now is, and then I'm probably going to have to head off and fall asleep. To what degree is adding all these extra mechanics? One, I see how it makes it more difficulty, but does it create too many aspects that they have to be kept track of to be able to play
One
magic?
isolated area, like, because tolerance is what it is, you'd literally just track it in the same exact place, and you would just acknowledge the fact that anytime you do an essence check, that would be magic included, because it follows the same exact rules. There's literally nothing new to learn. The only thing you're really doing in this case, with this particular idea, is just going like, okay, anything that causes you to, like, push really hard down at the baseline, if you're using an essence check to overcome something, there's a chance you kind of push yourself a little hard. You know what I mean? And it could affect...
I like it, and I like the idea of almost saying, hey, if you want to make this game a little bit more difficult, start playing with tolerances. Start letting your person get exhausted.
Right, you could turn it up a little bit, because that means that, because it becomes universal, that means that your essence checks suffer die penalties when you push yourself too hard. That means that if
the other characters have the same, like if I'm sitting there firing a gun off, eventually I'm going to get tired.
Right, but there's a difference between like having yourself being a conditioned combatant and going like, okay, I'm feeling tired and I can still go and I can still shoot my weapon well, So, and the advantage of pain tolerance, which pain does this already. See, that's the compounding
Say,
factor.
Yeah.
Is it?
Pain does that already because that applies to all checks.
Yep. You're either taking a minus on a
So-
standard, or you're losing a die when you're rolling an essence check of some kind.
Really.
And you wouldn't be doing an essence check for firing your gun over and over. Like that
No.
would be,
Nope.
some sort of sustained thing, or like again trying to avoid your body being ripped apart, or
Yeah,
something.
it's usually something at the baseline. There's a fundamental element of your character in struggle, and
I would like to point out, if you've ever fired a revolver over and over and over, you eventually get trigger finger. Like, your finger eventually is like, okay, I'm tired. I don't want to fire anymore.
oh yeah, I know. Yep. Having fired plenty of weapons back in the day. Actually, it's for me, especially like the shotgun, the shoulder bit. Ugh, that starts to get so
yeah.
sore.
Oh,
Oh yeah, I come back with friggin' bruises right here, even if I'm
Yes.
holding it tight.
That's why Barrick was so good, because he just had the mechanical arm.
Oh yeah, you could just be like, steady as she goes, blap.
It's got like the gimbals on it, and like the
steady as she goes.
Yeah.
recoil
All right, well,
suppressor.
gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, but I think I'm gonna go find some bed and try to.
I might actually conk out as well.
That's
slink my
perfectly
way
fine.
through
I
my
think
Friday.
I think we didn't talk about like making any new spells except for mist, possibly, as an option. And I'll start thinking about other ways that I can sort of tweak, bend, mold, screw around with some of these other common spell ideas and go from there. But that's the other thing too, is I'm putting this stuff into World Anvil and I'm putting it into Patreon. I'm starting to do a little.
I really like the news drop on Patreon.
Yeah.
Besides the fact
Make
that you
magic
like
happen, guys.
thanked me, that was very
Good
nice.
night.
I think it's a good venue. Take care, Drew.
Later, do. Yeah. Well, and I want to do that. Like I said, there's too much information, way too much, that I don't have an excuse for not having a newsletter of some kind or another to identify
Yeah.
what's being done. I just don't have an excuse. I'm
Well,
always
I
just
think
like,
it's a-
I'm too tired. Like,
I think it's a good way to, like right now, as we're building this stuff, we need to. I watched that Kickstarter fail. That this guy had like a really good concept, and where he suffered was he was under the illusions of like, if I make a good product, people will buy it, and it was like, right, plus marketing, like
yeah,
good product plus advertising equals people will buy it.
yeah,
Maybe. And he got to like 60%, I think, of his goal in Kickstarter or something. And part of his flaw there was that he like went on vacation for a week of the month-long Kickstarter. And
Yeah.
so like nobody was pushing it, nobody was promoting it, he wasn't linking up with anything, and it had no momentum. And so I think having a like I'm reading freaking patch notes on Steam for, hey, we added 3 more gadgets to this game that's been in early access for 2 years. And I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, I'll read those notes.
yeah.
Like Valheim's like, we changed the color of fire by 1 pixel. And I'm like, yes, I'll read those notes. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
So I think having something like that, it's not quite patch notes, but like developer blog, right? Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
just
that's
it
great-
made perfect
great
sense to me when I
idea.
did it today. I'm like, this will be perfect. I can just relay what's going on and what we're working on, so that there's. Plus, it also makes sure that I'm on target. That's the other benefit. I'm kind of going like, oh, that's what I'm working on.
Absolutely, it's good. It's good stuff all around.
I got ADD. I don't think straight.
Right. I need to be given no boundaries, but also I really work well given a structure.
Right. I also need to give myself something I can function with, because like it's the classic
Yeah.
ADD thing where it's like, oh yeah, a couple of days before deadline, let's do it. It's important now. I got to get this done, and you do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I've always been able to do that. And I had somebody explain the whole ADD thing, where it's just sort of like, deadlines are great because what happens is it forces you to realize they're important, but only when it's getting to the important part.
It's rough, but I'm so like impressed with how, looking back at like where we started with a couple of like Word docs, and like now like with the World Anvil, the Patreon, and like the regular content and all that. I think it's a slow drive, but there's not a shortcut to success. You know,
Well,
it'll
and
benefit us in the long run.
I completely believe in this thing. Like 100%. I'm like, it's gonna get there. Like I'm thinking, like originally I was like, towards end of year, but I reassessed that. I said it in the newsletter even. I was just like, somewhere around in January, I think we'll actually have something feasibly in the like alpha beta type category to start
Yeah.
messing around with, like
I
in
think we
earnest.
could have something to share for people to try their own run of it.
Mm-hmm. Completely. So.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take off.
Okay.
Good chat tonight.
Yeah. World building success without consequences.
All right. All right. Take care.
Latest. All right, people. That's it for me as well. I'm going to dip off. Tomorrow will be a late stream. I'm going to be doing some. I'm going to be venturing out to go assist with my daughter in a dance because that's important, and I won't be back until later in the evening anyway. So I will be doing it late, but it's still coming. And this time I'm just going to pick something that works instead of having to deal with whatever the hell it was that I was trying to deal with Psychonauts. So, yeah. I will see you guys there, or be square. Alright? Alright. Latest.